We talk about becoming better. You not only get to talk about this kind of stuff, but you also get to be like in a community with like-minded people that are all working towards becoming better human beings and real estate agents. And here is a real estate titan that is pushing the limits on the status quo.
And it took years and years of failing to get where I am today.
You're like, whoa, where you actually get the most clarity.
That was kind of one of those pivotal moments when I started building a business.
I spent a lot of time becoming an expert salesperson.
So for anybody listening to this, just a plug for the Real Estate Growth Network. Number one, launching very soon. So please inquire with us. We'll have our website and a form link in this podcast. But we have Daily Growth that's launching soon. And that's 5 days a week, 30 minutes. It's absolutely free. And this is the stuff we talk about. Like, we talk about becoming better. You not only get to talk about this kind of stuff, but you also get to be like in a community with like-minded people that are all working towards becoming better human beings and real estate agents. And then to plus that, we actually have a weekly digital mastermind that you can become a part of. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is there are assets that are available inside of that mastermind. For instance, there are people way better than us, way smarter than us that have found so much more success, that have developed things that we have taken on inside of our business and found success with. A good example of that would be our open house script. So the way we teach people to run an open house does generate leads, does generate business, and produces results. That's something that inside of that weekly digital mastermind, you would have access to, and many more things. To piggyback on what you said, Chase, go to someone who's found success in it and find out how they did it. And then your likelihood of success is going to increase exponentially, instead of you entrepreneurially doing it and just going and doing an open house and not knowing exactly how to do it or what to say and just fumbling through it.
Yeah. I love that. And that's what we talk about. So I love daily growth. I'm super excited about that coming to a day near you soon. I think within the next few weeks, we'll be launching that. And that's going to be exciting. And essentially, you're going to pop on. We're going to give you what we're thinking about, and then we're going to ask you what you're thinking about. And it's going to be every day. So if you want a community, if you're alone in real estate, that's one thing I found, Brent. I was super lonely in real estate before I grew my own team. And even then, like, it still can be lonely. So if you're looking for a community, we got it for you. And yeah, it's exciting.
Why are we doing it for free, Chase? Because I think that's where people are going to get hung up and be like, Brent and Chase have big businesses. Their time is valuable. Why are they going to get on 5 days a week for 30 minutes a day for free and help me build my business?
Well, I think, there's some obvious things that are ingrained in us. Like, we want to help people. That's the reality. We can make money. We've figured out how to make money. We'll eventually monetize this, not daily growth. That'll always be free. But we have plenty of ways to make money beyond doing this. This is something that is ingrained in us. I know Brent wants to inspire wholeness in others, and I want to maximize your potential. And that is what keeps us ticking every day. So that's probably the foundational. And then, of course, we know that people need a community, and, we love to be able to, learn from other people. I know we're going to learn things from the community. And of course, we want to pour into that community. And then ultimately, there's going to be people that need more. Then that's going to be kind of the launch pad for something that's a very minimal investment, which is weekly digital mastermind. And then, we offer one-on-one coaching as well for those that are looking for the highest level of accountability and the highest results. But yeah, it's free, and I would love nothing more than to see thousands and thousands of people show up every day.
Well, and here's the thing I do know is success leaves clues. And we know that people that plug into daily development and business practices have a significantly higher net income. So if you're not making the money that you want, or you don't have a community to plug into, to communicate with, to learn from, or you need more community, daily growth is where it's at.
Here's a fun stat. Our local brokerage did this stat over like a multi-year period, they found that an agent who attended 2 classes or more per month, they were like 10 times more likely to make 6 figures than agents who didn't, which is crazy. So it's like, okay, obviously we're playing a lot of numbers and averages and stuff, but like if all I've got to do is show up to 2 classes a month and I'm 10 times more likely to make 6 figures, maybe I should do that. So Brent, agents get into this business and they think that, they want freedom and they want to be able to do whatever they want, whenever they want. And of course they want to make money. What's fascinating though is the amount of money that you can make as a real estate professional. The dollar per hour is massive. And we can do an exercise if you want, but it's hundreds of dollars per hour. The challenge is a lot of these agents won't actually put in a 40-hour week. So, they maybe came from, I don't know, you can come from all sorts. I came from retail. I was working at the Home Depot making $12 an hour. I came over to the real estate world. I see a lot of bartenders come over. I see a lot of servers. I see, there are people that come from other professions as well. But once they get here, for some reason, there isn't a schedule that you have to follow. There isn't clock in, clock out. And so I think agents feel like they're working a lot of hours, but what's the reality there, Brent? How many hours are they actually working when we break it down?
I've talked about this in the past quite a few times, but the average agent works a little over 3 hours a day if you compact all of the activities that they put in on a daily basis. What it actually pans out to be is about 2.5 full days of work a week. And so, like, I always trap people in this conversation. I basically say, hey, if you could find a way to work I think the number's 2.25 days per week, would you do it and make all the money you want? And yes. Okay. Well, the challenge is right now, most average agents are working 2.25 days per week. And I call it the unstructured struggle. It's because the real work is the income producing activities, which in my world, what I say is network, build your database, go on appointments, negotiate contracts. Like those 4 things, network being you can be out meeting people, or you can be prospecting and meeting people. You can be open houses and meeting people. That's what I mean by network. Build your database would be adding them to the database and then working in the database to nurture the relationship and turn it into future business. And then obviously go on appointments and negotiate contracts. That's pretty obvious. So when you pack those things in, agents typically work just a few hours a day.
Yeah. And honestly, that's a good agent. I mean, can we be honest? Like,
yeah,
there's a lot of agents who they'll put in a 40-hour week, but they do those activities for a few hours or less.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild.
So what I'm doing is I'm actually saying an average agent, most of their whole workday is packed into that few hours a day, meaning the time that they are going on appointments, but also the time that they're showing houses or I mean, anything, all of it packed into that. You could even throw the trainings they're going to, all of it.
You're not saying they leave their house, go into work for 3 hours, and then go home. You're not saying that. You're saying the things that matter add up to a very short period of their day.
Okay. Yes and no. For an average agent, I'm saying it's even a smaller fraction of that few hours of day, them doing what matters. What I'm saying is their day is so unstructured that it's full of things that don't even apply to growing a business at all. They're not educating themselves. They're just packed full of, I went into the office today and 80% of it was, chit-chatting, water cooler talk, social media, scrolling through my email, busy work, stuff that's not actually
let me just make sure people understand what you're talking about. I just in the most simple terms ever, and then we can go in the weeds. The most simple terms ever is agents, even agents who leave their house, go into work, get there at 8, 9, 10, whatever. They work for 7, 8 hours at the office, then they leave. Right. What you're saying is inside of that time frame, there's only a few things that matter. And when you add those up, it's not very many hours.
It's not very many hours.
Okay.
So back to your example of like people leave these jobs where they're getting paid hourly and have you ever seen a bartender work? They're busting their tails, right? And server, or when you worked at Home Depot, I'm sure you didn't stop working.
You maybe had a break. And you're constantly doing the job.
Yes, correct. So that's the piece that for whatever reason, there's a disconnect for a majority of real estate agents, which is why there's a huge fallout rate. And, why do you think that is? Why do you think people get into this business and then they don't do the same thing. They don't clock in and work all day.
Well, let's use your term, unstructured struggle. Let's just start with unstructured. I think there is a lot of freedom. And with that freedom comes, if you want results, comes a lot of responsibility. And I think there's so many things you can do. A lot of people just get paralyzed. The having more options usually doesn't equate to better results. So, like, think about you going to a restaurant, and there's very few restaurants that are successful that have 50-page menus. The only one I can think of is the Cheesecake Factory. It's known for its menu, but you get there and you're just like, I don't even know what I want to eat. Similar thing when you show up to work in real estate. You're like, well, how do I get business? And if you ask 10 realtors how you get business, do you think you're going to get the same answer every time?
You're likely going to get 10 different answers.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you're like, I don't know. Should I do open houses? Should I, go do this networking thing? Should I make phone calls? Should I door knock? There's so many things, and you should yourself, right? You slow down, and you don't really get deep. So I think that's one thing. I think the other thing is, once you find out what gets results, Brent, it maybe isn't what you thought real estate was. So, have you ever watched any of those real estate shows on TV?
$1 million Listing New York, Selling Sunset,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
What do they not show on those?
Lead generation.
Yeah. That's exactly right. They don't show them sitting in a cubicle making phone calls for 4 hours a day. Now, of course, those agents, maybe they're not doing that as much anymore.
Their
Maybe they're
lead
not
gen
doing
is probably the show.
ding,
Like,
ding, ding, right?
Right.
But leading up to getting the opportunity to be on the show, their lead gen was probably something else. It
Yeah.
just ultimately, it takes a lot of effort to get to a position where business is just coming to you, and that effort's going to come from somewhere. So yeah, of course they're on a TV show now, but like bottom line is, if you were outside looking in and you're like, Selling Sunset, I can dress up fancy, I can, be drama, I can go get hammered, I can go play golf. Like, if you're thinking that's what real estate is, and then you get in it and you're like, wait a minute, like, where's all my clients? Like, I'm licensed now. Where's all the people that want to buy from me? I'm here.
Yeah.
That's just not the way it works. So what do you think?
Well, I think what you're describing is what I call the clarity curve. And so people get into the business with this complete illusion of what it is. But the reality is, because they don't know what it is, their chemistry is high and their clarity on what it is low. And this goes for so many things in life. But what happens is, once they start to understand what it takes, depending on how disillusioned they were to begin with, and that contrast, once they start to understand, their clarity goes way up, and naturally their chemistry goes down. Like, their excitement to do the job goes down. So the best agents learn to operate in that space. And there's a multitude of ways to do it, understanding your purpose, gamifying it. Some people just are downright gritty, and they just don't care that it's not fun and that it's not exciting. They just do the work. But the reality is once you're in this dip inside of a clarity curve where clarity is high, chemistry is low, you literally just have to do the most boring foundational things over and over and over again. And that's the differentiator between an agent who ends up finding success and an agent who gets out and goes back to their 9 to 5. Is they weren't able to reconcile the boringness and the difficulty that the job actually is, which makes me laugh, by the way, when you see these social media battles, when someone's talking bad about real estate agents or how much they make, and they make way too much money, whatever, because of the cost to sell or cost to buy a house. But when you really break it down, any of those people complaining about the cost, the reality is 9 out of 10 of them would not be able to do it. They would fail out. They would not succeed at any level inside of real estate. And that's just that's statistics playing out.
Well, and I mean, give you an example. A really good friend of mine got in the business thinking like agents are way overpaid, and then as the deals started happening, she got busy. She's very talented, she got busy, and then all these clients that were demanding tons of stuff. And then, I remember there was one deal, she was in it for like 9 months and it fell apart. And she's like, okay, I get it. Like, I understand, of course, if someone comes in and they're like, I want to buy this house and write it up for me. And you spend a handful of hours, like, yeah, that dollar per hour is insane, but you don't think about all the people that you spend 30, 40, 50, 60 hours with, especially as you're trying to get your skills up, because they might not even be a real buyer and you don't even know it because you're not good enough to understand and ask the right questions. And then you spend 50, 60 hours with someone and they don't buy. How much money do you make when someone doesn't buy?
0.
Yes.
By the way, I don't think the market would react well if we charged for our time.
Yeah, I mean, if you shift it over to an attorney type model where, it's hey, you need a retainer and, let's start with 5,000 and then, I'll let you know when you're getting low. Yeah.
This was my qualm with the whole lawsuit that, and it's ended up working out fine because sellers understand. That's the reality, which is super interesting. Commission's always been negotiable, but sellers, have paid buyer agent commissions. That was pretty common, but it has remained common even after the lawsuit because they were saying that sellers shouldn't have to. But the reality is what the market understands, the free market, is that if you put too many roadblocks in front of home ownership, then the demand goes down dramatically because there's a lot of people that, number one, couldn't pay hourly. If you were charging hourly, they wouldn't even get into the process of buying a house. They just wouldn't do it because they couldn't afford it. And they likely can't afford your rate. Even if it was half, they still wouldn't be able to afford it. And the sellers understand that. So the reality is nothing really changed after the lawsuit because the way the buyers work. But to go all the way back to what we were talking about, why is it then, you can make so much money in this business? There's literally no lid. I mean, you get what you put in. So other than people just not being able to deal with the fact that lead generation is hard, why is it, do you think, that real estate agents cannot create some kind of a consistency in their life and business to produce regular income?
Well, like, let's think about a typical job. You get a job description, right? And so let's go to the bartender. It's like, hey, make sure people have drinks, make sure your space is clean, make sure you're ringing people up, make sure your till's right, make sure you clean up after the bar's over. Like, you have all these tasks. But again, in real estate, there's so many things you could do. And so if you're a brand new agent, in fact, here in 2 hours, Brent, I'm going to speak to the real estate school. So a bunch of brand new agents. And this would be, I don't have enough time to go into this, unfortunately, but I hope they listen to this. Maybe shout out if I'm going to tell you to listen to this podcast. So shout out to you if you made it this far. But if they went into this business saying, here's the things I'm going to do, and then they just did it. And when I say did it, do it, agents give up pretty quick, right? One of my favorite examples here, I'll use a piece of paper to represent this. So I'm going to rip this up. But agents come into this business. This is from a mentor of mine in the past. He's like, here's what happens. They get in this business and they say, hey, I did open houses. This represents all of the business that you could get. Okay. Just so we're clear.
Yep.
So they're like, hey, I did open houses. No one came. That didn't work. I tried to door knock. Someone slammed the door in my face. I called through expired listings, but they don't want to list again. I called for sale by owners. They don't want to pay my commission. I tried farming. No one called me back. I did the web lead things, but those people are like 10 years out. And I tried this new technology system. It didn't work. So I'm going to help my uncle buy and my grandma.
Okay, so for anybody listening to this, what Chase just did is he took a full piece of paper. Every time something didn't work, he ripped a piece off and threw it away. Eventually, you were holding a very small piece of paper.
Slip. Yeah, this is going to be my market now because it's what works. And so the problem is, like, let's go back to that open house. I held an open house and no one came. Now, if you're listening to this, has it ever happened to you? Hello. Yeah.
Or I held an open house and a lot of people came and none of them were buyers.
They all had agents, right? Or they were just looky-loos or whatever. So that's what happens. So you're like, I tried open houses. Now, if you slow down and you're like, okay, well, has anyone else done open houses and had success?
Yes.
Right. And the answer, of course, is yes. So it's like, okay, well, what did they do? Maybe before you hold an open house, find out what they did. And then again, before you write open houses off, like how many are you going to do before you give up? And that's actually a great question that I would ask. If you're going to start some new thing, how long are you willing to do this with no results before you give up? And if the answer is not, you know, at least a significant amount of time. So I'm thinking like open houses, like at least 10. I'm thinking if you're going to be calling expireds, like you have to speak with at least 30 of them, right? Because you probably suck at it and you're going to have to get better before you can rule this out. 30 is not even that many. I mean, really, that's probably a little weak. Like if you're going to farm, you have to farm, like let's send at least 12 pieces of mail before we decide if this is working or not. So I think longevity and consistency are a big piece that miss. So you have an agent that just bounces from thing to thing to thing. It's like, hey, I tried to bartend tonight for 10 minutes and it was hard. So now I'm going to go cook. And I tried to cook and I burnt something. So now I'm going to go take the trash out, but that's really heavy and it stinks. Now I'm going to go like what you just keep bouncing around. Like you're not going to get good at anything. And yeah. So Brent's right. How about the news? You want to jump into some of the
Yeah,
stuff
let's
that's
do it,
going
man.
on?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, so let's start from the top. This one's a little bit interesting. I thought it was kind of interesting. So the Federal Trade Commission is suing Zillow and Redfin over a rental ad deal. The rental ad deal, honestly, like that's probably not the news to me, but I'll read what it is and then we'll kind of dive into it. So, the U.S. Federal Trade Commission filed a lawsuit against Zillow and Redfin, alleging that in February, Zillow paid Redfin $100 million in exchange for Redfin giving up its advertising contracts and stopping competition in the multi-family rental ad space. The FTC claims Redfin agreed to promote Zillow listings exclusively, effectively diminishing competition in online advertising and harming renters and property managers. Redfin terminated many of its advertising relationships and laid off hundreds of employees. Meanwhile, the FTC's complaint seeks to unwind the arrangement, forcing divestitures or restructuring to restore competitions. What they basically did is say, "Hey, we'll give you $100 million bucks. You guys stop advertising other people's rentals, only advertise ours." And so, if you're a small mom and pop and you wanted a rental on Redfin, nope, not going to happen. And so that requires small mom and pop needs to pay Zillow, right? To put they're either going to just put it on Zillow because they can't put it on Redfin anymore, and you're eliminating competition. So what's really interesting here is more or less the consolidation of like the fastest way to grow is just to buy market share, and So here's my question for you. I don't want to get into like rental listings because I don't think that's a huge market for real estate agents. It is in major cities, but not in the majority of people we deal with. So I guess I'm just curious, like, what are your thoughts on Zillow and Redfin, two large companies, agreeing to stop competing with one another?
So, what are my thoughts on the two large platforms not competing with each other?
Yeah, essentially. Yeah. I mean, well, they're effectively one's paying the other and saying, "Hey, screw everyone else." I mean, that's kind of what's happening.
Yes, it kind of in a roundabout way, it feels like a limited visibility play. Does that make sense?
Tell me more.
Like, I'm trying to figure out how to put this into words. Consolidation like that, where people, it's almost like their decision is forced. Otherwise, their visibility is limited. That makes sense.
A little bit. I
Well,
mean,
when you hear that, what do you think?
well, I mean,
Maybe I'm misunderstanding the lawsuit.
like the most basic source, the most basic way I can describe what happened was Zillow says, "Hey, you're advertising, you're taking money from all these companies to promote listings on Redfin, rental listings. How about we just give you $100 million bucks and you never take theirs again and you only promote our stuff?" So that's effectively what they're doing. And in terms of
Say that one more time because that's a pretty powerful point.
so Zillow says, "Hey, Redfin, you have all these ads of rentals on your property. Instead of charging for ads for rentals and collecting money from hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of, like, think about apartment complexes pay Redfin $2,000 a month to promote their apartments or whatever, right? Like all these different players. How about instead of that, I write you a check for 100 million and you only promote my stuff and you can't promote anything else?" And
Okay.
so what's really happening here is they're smashing competition. It's kind of like a monopoly type play, and the FTC is saying, "Hey, you're getting rid of this competition. That's not allowed." So, I do think it's limiting exposure to other things, but what it's really doing is it now, if you're an advertiser, let's say you have an apartment complex, you used to be able to pay Redfin or Zillow, and Redfin and Zillow would have to compete with one another. You can't pay Redfin anymore. So
Yeah.
now you can only pay Zillow, so Zillow can raise the price to whatever and you can deal with it, or you can not have.
Okay. So this is what I was trying to articulate by limited visibility is when options become consolidated like that because companies like Zillow force out their competition through writing a big check. What that does is it limits options for exposure. And because the option is limited, they can increase their price, therefore putting smaller, like mom and pop broker property managers or just individual property managers at odds with the cost to market their.
Yeah, the cost to market will go up because there's less options. There's less of a market to advertise on, right?
Yeah. I have a feeling that the FTC is going to fracture that deal. That would be my guess because it is an ad monopoly. But my question is what if that happened in real estate?
So go further. How would it happen in real estate? Give me an example.
Well, so like Compass right now, it's almost like the reverse. They're saying, hey, they bought Anywhere Real Estate. And I don't know if the deal's finalized or done and that it's inked. I think it's in due diligence. Who knows? Maybe it's done. But the reverse is they're saying, hey, we're going to market your listing exclusively out. In other words, it's not going to go anywhere else. It will only go inside of and marketed to anybody inside of this brokerage, which happens to be, I think, the largest brokerage since they bought that. Meaning, like KW is the largest agent count, but they're not the largest brokerage because it's all franchises. And so, if they're the largest brokerage, then consumers feel like their options have been limited. And how does that play into the same concept of like, I think limited options produce cost issues. There's not a free market feel. There's not a clear cooperation between everybody involved. There seems to be collusion. So
Yeah, I mean, they're controlling the listing, right? So, Compass right now has already wanted to, in certain circumstances, not have to put everything that they list on the MLS. They want to be able to market properties without putting them on the MLS right now,
right.
which I'm at odds with because, yes, the MLS is great. It's nice for everyone to see everything that's on the market. You truly end up with a market. But the flip side is like sometimes there can be an advantage to the seller if they don't go on the MLS and properties are marketed. But it's a hard thing. It's way beyond my pay grade.
I think it's difficult because, ultimately you fall into the intentions of agents who don't have the best interest of the client and they want to keep it off of the market so they can increase their.
Yeah, you get bad actors. Yeah, you get bad
Yeah, and
actors.
so that's the tug of war there I guess is Compass fighting the good fight? Are they fighting it because what's happened is the release of the listing information through the MLS deals has actually empowered companies to be anti cooperative or they're overly competitive with the real estate industry. Meaning, with Zillow, we could be one corporate pivot away from losing control of our listings. And I think to diversify that as an agent, if I was thinking about it, is to find ways to own your own traffic. So your own IDX and SEO, obviously own the relationship because that's something that these corporate companies can never get in the way of. And then own your own content, filming your own stuff and posting your own stuff and becoming attractive in other facets outside of the portals, listing videos on social media that go viral, etc.
Well, let's be clear. You and I are not rental experts by any means. I think this is two major real estate companies that are colluding is kind of an interesting term, but that's the article. And so when you have this happen, it's worth talking about. But let's go to one more news article because I think it's important. It's more of like a prediction piece, but this is from Fannie Mae and the Street. They say mortgage rates are expected to fall below 6% by the end of 2026. So here's the synopsis. Fannie Mae's September economic and housing outlook forecasts that mortgage rates will decline from 6.4% in 2025 to 5.9% by the end of 2026. That's about a 0.5%. They project home sales to rise accordingly, about 4.72 million in 2025 to 5.16 million in 2026. The refinance share is also expected to increase from 26% in 2025 to 35% in 2026. I think, you and I have talked about this for a while. Getting rates under 6% kind of unlocks the real estate market. Tell us more about that, Brent.
Well, I think given the way that you can get rate adjustments based on seller credits or builder incentives, if you get below 6, then with the available equity that people have, that puts you in a position to get your 30-year fixed rate potentially into the 4s, into the low to mid 4s, maybe high 4s, depending on the situation, depending on the seller credit, depending on if it's a 1-2 or 3-1 buy down, or 2-1 buy down, or 3-1 buy down. You can get a really aggressive 30-year fixed rate if they get dip below 6. And I think if you look at the amount of people with interest rates below 5 is pretty high. And so people are locked in because they're not wanting to give up. And by the way, agents aren't, and I think we should touch on this, but I don't think agents are properly vetting and problem solving with their consumer, which is causing the lock-in effect. But I think that actually does open up the market because it will give the perception to the consumer that their budget's going to stay the same, and prices, haven't necessarily dropped a whole hell of a lot. So, their payment could still go up if rates are in the 5s, but within reason that they've justified. But I think how people combat that is agents should be communicating with their clients and problem solving with them. So first of all, if they have a good enough reason to move and they can afford it, they should do it. Now, the afford it part is the piece that I think a lot of people miss, is because a lot of times you can problem solve, like, hey, do you have debt? And if you paid that debt off by selling your house and then you bought a new house, like your overall monthly expenses would drop by X, and they don't know that. So I think there's a piece to problem solving it too.
Yeah, clients don't understand it and agents don't know how to explain it. And if you could figure that out, it's critical. Here's what jumps out to me. I think a lot of people understand that the Fed is going to lower the rates, 1 to 2 more times this year. In fact, I was just pulling it up. The current data says that there's a 95% chance, as of today, we're recording this, it's October 9th. There's a 95% chance that on October 29th, which is when the Fed meeting is, they're going to lower the rate 25 basis points. And then if you go to December, there is an 80% chance that they'll lower it another 25 basis points to a total of 50 basis points lower than it is today. Now, if the rate's 6.4% on average today, that's 50 basis points or a 0.5% right there. But what is interesting is because of the uncertainties in the economy right now, that 50 basis points lowering, even though it's kind of already baked in, Fannie Mae is expecting 50 basis points to show up in the 30-year fixed mortgage a year from today. So I just think that's kind of interesting. Like, even though rates are getting lower, it takes time for that to make its way over to the
Treasury market
mortgage rates. So just something to note. The
Yeah,
Fed
well, I
lowering
think
rates does not directly impact mortgage rates right away.
Yeah, and I think you can. If I were an agent, here's what I would do. The fact is consumers don't realize, a lot of them don't realize that the Fed rate and the mortgage rates don't, go hand in hand. Like they don't necessarily correlate to each other, but the consumer doesn't know that. So you leverage the news as a reason to call them and have a conversation with them. Hey, did you hear the rates dropped or the potential drop?
Brilliant.
By the way, let me tell you how that actually won't possibly not even impact rates, or rates have currently already taken into account these drops. So a lot of times the interest rates, the way that the treasuries work is you'll see a positive shift in rates months before the rates drop. So there's a chance that might already be baked in. So the question that I would be asking people is, do you have a good enough reason? Can you afford it? And if they say they can't afford it, I think that's where, we as agents, we owe it to our clients to help them understand the financial situations or ways that they can make it work, because a lot of people want to move, but they feel that they can't. And that's our job to help them understand how they can.
Yeah, great point. If you want to track rates and what kind of moves them, the 10-year treasury is the closest thing to the 30-year fix. Wherever it goes is typically where the 30-year fix goes. Yeah. All right. What I know we're up on time here. How do you want to round this out, Brent?
Keep an eye out for our daily growth announcement. If you don't follow us on Instagram, it's Real Estate Growth Network. REG.network is the handle. We'll be announcing it there. And then I know that our daily growth Facebook page is already up and running. So if you're a part of daily growth, you actually will be a part of the Facebook page too, where there's messages put in there. So log into Facebook, look us up, Real Estate Growth Network Daily Growth, and we'll hope to see you on the daily growth calls.
Yeah. Looking forward to it, guys. Have an amazing week, and we'll talk to you soon.
See you guys later. You did it again.